everything fell apart. It was an ordinary Wednesday. My comfortable, predictable life suddenly felt like a carefully crafted lie. I'd gotten home earlier than usual, and the sound of Mar's footsteps echoed from our bedroom. Heading upstairs to say hello, I caught her voice through the slightly open door. As I approached, her words came into focus. "Yeah, babe, today was incredible. I loved every moment I stopped short." Marge never talked like that about work. The door stood ajar, and instinct pushed me to glance inside. She was mid-change, phone still pressed to her ear. As her skirt hit the floor, I caught sight of black lace underwear, ones I'd never seen before. I almost stepped in, but her next words nailed me to the spot. "Okay, I should go, Hun. Be home soon. Talk tomorrow, handsome." She ended the call, slipped off her blouse, and stood there in a matching lace bra. As she peeled away the last layer and headed for the shower, she paused in front of the mirror. Of course, she'd check her reflection. From where I stood, the view was clear. What I saw stopped me cold. A bruise on her left bosom, one I didn't put there. Her eyes widened as she spotted it. "Damn," she muttered. "Gotta cover this up. Unbelievable." The shower sputtered to life, but I couldn't move. I stood there trembling, the floor suddenly unsteady beneath me. "My name is David Atkinson. Marge and I have been married for 23 years. We have 2 kids, Julia 19 and Tom 18. She works part-time at an Air National Guard base while I'm a chemical engineer. Until that night, I believed our life was solid, even enviable. Clearly, I'd been fooling myself. Once I gathered my wits, I stepped into the bedroom and grabbed her phone, hoping to check the last call locked. We'd never used passcodes before. I realized it had been months since I'd last touched her phone. Her blouse lay on the bed. It carried a faint trace of shaving cream, not mine. That was the breaking point. I marched to the kitchen, grabbed a DVR, sealed her underwear in a Ziploc bag, and stashed everything in the garage. I set the DVR to record, hiding it beneath one of my ties, nearly invisible downstairs. Her laptop screen glowed perfect. I tried accessing her email, but it too was password protected. Another red flag. Neither of us had ever bothered. Locking our devices. Before conflicted, I left the house without proof. Confronting her would get me nowhere. I dialed her number, knowing she was still in the shower. "Hey, babe," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Work's a mess. I'll grab dinner out." After securing the evidence, I headed to a dive bar nearby. The place was run down but quiet, perfect for thinking a new bartender. Mary served my gin and tonic. She was friendly, easy to talk to, and casually mentioned being a single mom trying to make ends meet. The conversation offered a brief, welcome distraction. I got home around 11. The house was silent. As I slipped into my robe, Marge stirred. "You're late?" "Yeah," I replied. "Long day. I'll make it up to you if you're feeling neglected." She sighed and turned away, too tired. "Maybe in a couple of days." "Deal sleep well night," she uttered, already drifting off. I retrieved the DVR and watched the footage. After her shower, she'd gone straight to the mirror, examining the bruise. Then she'd pulled on flannel pajamas. Strange, since she usually slept without clothes. I saved the video, wiped the camera, and raised the thermostat 4 degrees. Let's see how long she'd keep those flannels. On Thursday morning, I left early, avoiding conversation. I called in late to work and rang my friend, George. He'd been through hell during his divorce after catching his wife cheating. "Now it was my turn, George," I said when he picked up. "I think Marge is cheating. I need advice, Jesus." "Dave, I'm sorry. Come over. We'll figure this out." An hour later, I left his place with a plan and 5 digital recorders, the same ones George had used. To uncover the truth back home, I planted 4 recorders around the house and reserved one for her car. While combing through her closet, I found clothes I'd never seen before. Bolder, flashier, definitely not work attire. In the back of a drawer, I uncovered ripped lingerie not worn out, torn like someone had yanked it in a hurry. The sight alone made my stomach churn. Later that day, I called her voicemail. "Hey, babe stuck at work home late tonight." That evening, I slipped the final recorder into her car and waited until she was asleep to review the recordings. Nothing yet, but patience was my only option. By Sunday morning, after breakfast with the kids, I disconnected the Wi-Fi and left a note breakfasts in the microwave. Back cleaning the yard. 2 hours later, she stormed outside, frustrated David the Wi-Fi's down inside. I pretended to troubleshoot while she hovered visibly anxious. Once she stepped away, I installed a keylogger too. Monitor her emails, passwords, and screenshots. When everything was set, I reconnected the Wi-Fi fixed. I said, showing her the browser, "But your hard drive's sluggish. Hit this button tonight and it'll run a cleanup." Her smile returned. "Thanks, big guy. How can I make it up to you?" I grinned. "Wash my car." Her expression fell definitely not the answer she expected. I kissed her cheek and walked away, reminding myself to stay cool. She couldn't suspect a thing until I had rock-solid proof. That night, we watched movies with the kids. Marge was unusually affectionate, snuggling close and flirting. It was clear she was in the mood. Halfway through, I excused myself, grabbed a drink and one of her sleeping pills. It had knocked me out in 45 minutes. 15 minutes later, she nudged me. "Hey, don't fall asleep." I stretched and yawned, exhausted. "I'm calling it a night." Her disappointment was obvious, especially when the kids asked for another movie. I slipped into bed and passed out cold, unaware of what the next day would bring. Sunday was meant to be my day to sleep in, but I found myself wide awake at restless and uneasy. The thought of facing Marge was unbearable. Morning closeness was practically routine, and I couldn't fake affection. Quietly, I switched off her alarm, slipped out of bed, and headed downstairs. I powered up my laptop, knowing I had to tread carefully. Avoiding her completely would raise suspicion. While the keylogger booted up, I secured my computer with a password buried in a hidden folder where over 500 emails. 2 from 6 months back caught my eye, both from someone named Will Perez. His email address was tied to a private domain, and the messages seemed work-related at first glance. A colleague, perhaps, or the other man. I filtered the inbox by sender and found an email from 4 months ago titled, "Hey, beautiful." It wasn't explicit, but definitely flirtatious. A quick domain search turned up nothing. Just a registration with no active website. Sorting by date, I discovered 6 messages from old Willie, all sent the previous day. No wonder she guarded her laptop so fiercely. I opened the most recent thread. Marge had complained about the bruises he'd left and how hard it was to hide them from me. His cold reply stung. "It happens. Get over it. Screw your husband." 14 minutes later, she'd responded. "I know you don't love your wife, but I love my husband. I never wanted to hurt him. It's bad enough. I barely let him touch me. Lately, I'm not meeting you Wednesday." Her so-called love didn't soften the betrayal. The following emails revealed him backtracking, apologies, promises to be gentler, even suggesting a getaway. He sounded like a Lovick teenager. Her final message hit hard. "Glad you understand. I only travel with my husband, no Wednesday." The mark should fade in a week, and then I'll focus on making it up to David, making it up to me. As if that would undo the damage. They'd been meeting at a motel for at least 2 months. One email even revealed the location. Room 187, long-term rented by Will's company. It was right across from the bar I'd been to recently. Then another email popped in. Marge had just sent it. I can't stand a week without you. Let's meet at Wednesday at 1 p.m. Just be more careful this time. His reply was instant and nauseatingly enthusiastic. You're incredible. I'll make it perfect. That was it. I needed backup. I forwarded the damning emails to George and headed to the kitchen to make breakfast around. Marge strolled downstairs, stretching with a satisfied smile. Thanks for letting me sleep in, she said, kissing my cheek. Fair is fair, I replied, forcing a smile. I did crash pretty early last night. She hugged me from behind her lips, brushing my ear. Don't work too hard today, babe. Babe, I'll need you working hard tonight. I shrugged off the innuendo, almost done outside. As I turned to leave, I caught a flicker of concern in her expression, quickly masked. Once she saw me watching while tidying the garage. George called. Got a minute? Yeah, I said, stepping into the driveway. What's up? I read the emails. Man, I'm really sorry, at least now. I know, I muttered, but it won't hold up in court. True, George agreed. Photos of her entering the motel would help, not enough. I snapped. I want undeniable proof, something they can't talk their way out of. George sighed. I know the motel owner. If I tell him it's for an investigation, he'll let us in perfect. Can we set up surveillance, like you did with your ex? Absolutely motion and sound-triggered cameras? The footage will stream to a nearby receiver. You can access it right from your car. Do it, I said, without hesitation, and dig up everything you can. On Perez, I want the full picture on it. We can have everything set up by Monday or Tuesday. For the first time in days, I felt a sliver of control. The rest of Sunday passed quietly. Ironically, I found myself looking forward to closeness that night. Why not? I thought bitterly. Perez might have tainted it, but I could reclaim it on my terms later. As we lay tangled in the sheets, Marge nestled into my chest and whispered, David, I love you. You're the only man I'll ever need. I kissed her forehead, swallowing my fury. How dare she say that going to rinse off, I murmured. Slipping out of bed in the bathroom, anger bubbled up hot and sharp. Her words weren't careless, they were calculated. When I returned, she was fast asleep. I climbed into bed silent and seething. Monday morning, I slipped out before sunrise and headed straight to George's place. Got news. He said, waving me inside, Perez isn't just cheating with Marge. He's a serial player. Brings different women to that same room, thinks he's slick, but using the same location repeatedly idiotic. My jaw tightened, anything else. The motel manager can't stand. The guy says Perez maltreats. The staff works from the room a couple of days each week, but never before. George grinned? Let's make our move. We loaded up the surveillance gear and headed to the motel. George introduced me as part of the investigation. The manager, Kevin, didn't hesitate. I hate dirtbags like Perez. Kevin muttered, tossing us a room key. He treats everyone here like dirt mined. If we stash a receiver nearby, George asked. Eyeing a nearby service room, Kevin nodded. I'll get you a key. That room's hardly used. A quick call to Perez's room went unanswered. Perfect. We headed upstairs, knocked twice, then unlocked the door. The room was empty. I froze, staring at the rumpled bed where my wife had betrayed me. My stomach turned, but I forced myself to move. 2 hours later, cameras and recorders were discreetly installed. As we packed up, something on the desk caught my eye. A docking station. "Look at this, George." I said he must use his laptop here. George leaned in. "If he leaves it while grabbing lunch, I can slip in and install spyware. I'll camp out here every day if I have to." I muttered, "But first GPS on his car." "No surprises, Letton, not rush." George cautioned, "Weck, get him." "No mistakes," agreed. I sigh. "Leighton, grab lunch, treat." "How about across the street?" George suggested decent food. "Bartender, friendly works for me." The bar was nearly empty. "Mary." The bartender smiled as we walked in, but when she spotted George, her expression shifted from warmth to shock, dropping her bar towel. She hurried around the counter, ignoring me entirely, "George." She cried, throwing her arms around him. "I can't believe it's you." He hugged her back. Grinning, "Mary, looks like you're back on your feet." "Glad to see it not fully." She admitted, laughing, "But I'm getting there. Thanks for everything, George." I cleared my throat, wrote, "Mary, meet my friend, George." They both chuckled. Mary squeezed my arm. "I liked you from the start. Knowing you're George's friend, even better." I smiled. "He, a pain, but mostly harmless." She laughed. "Maybe that's just a guy thing." As she tended to other customers, she kept drifting back to chat. I learned more about her. She was saving for medical school, planning to start in 5 months. Her determination was impressive. By 2 p.m., the bar had emptied, leaving just the 3 of us. Mary glanced around and shrugged. "Daytime's always slow." She said, "No tips, but at least I get some study time. Chatting with you guys is a nice break." We kept the conversation light for another hour until Mary's expression turned serious. She glanced at George and quietly said, "I'll tell him." George gave a solemn nod, and Mary shifted her gaze to me, her face tightening with emotion. "If we're really going to be friends, you deserve the truth. Maybe you'll walk away after hearing in it." And I had get that. But I'd rather you hear it from me than someone else. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she gripped George's hand. "I met George the day he arrested me. He threw me into a filthy holding cell. I fell apart when I spotted the camera in the corner, but he didn't care, just locked the door and left. Then something changed. He came back, saw me sobbing, and paused." Her voice cracked. "He started yelling, told me I was throwing my life away, called me an idiot. No one had ever talked to me like that. But it hit home. I collapsed onto that disgusting mattress and cried like a kid. George just sat down next to me and asked one word, 'Why?' Mary glanced at George, her voice softening. For the first time in my life, I told someone everything. I didn't hold back. I don't even know how long I talked, but he didn't interrupt. Once, when I finally ran out of words, he squeezed my shoulder, locked the door again, and left me there for 14 hours. Her lips quivered. The next morning, he took me to court. My lawyer didn't say much, just went through the motions. The judge was ready to send me away. When George stood up, full uniform, calm, confident, he told the court that prison wouldn't fix me, rehab might. Mary gave a bitter laugh. Everyone froze. I was a repeat offender, guilty as hell. But here was this tough cop vouching for me. The judge hesitated, but eventually gave me a choice. 90 days in rehab, or 4 years behind bars if I messed up. I didn't even blink. I took rehab. Turning to George, she whispered, "I've been clean ever since." She stepped back and added quietly, I'm not on the streets anymore, but I'm still working. It's the only way I can save for school and take care of my daughter. If that changes how you see me, I get it. Before she could say more, George. And I embraced her. As long as you keep fighting, I'm here for you, George said firmly. I nodded. I'm glad we met, Mary. You've got a friend in me. She clung to us, silent tears trailing down her cheeks. That evening, Marge came home carrying Chinese takeout. She leaned in for a kiss, but I sidestepped and grabbed the bags instead. Great, I said, we're starving. Her smile flickered, uncertainty creeping into her expression. I kept my tone light. Why don't you change? While I set the table, her face paled. She hesitated but nodded and quietly headed to the bathroom. Dinner was tense. The kids picked up on the mood, but stayed silent. Marge barely touched her food, throwing out awkward conversation starters. I mostly ignored. Then it hit me, I was playing it wrong. Sunday night had been special for her, and my coldness now would only make her suspicious. I forced a smile. Sorry, work's been getting to me. Letton, hit, reset, how was your day? Relief flooded her features, and she launched into a casual rundown of errands and office gossip. I nodded, smiled, pretended like everything was fine. Later, once she'd gone to bed, I checked the recorders. Nothing new. I turned up the thermostat, got ready for bed and slid under the covers, keeping my back to her. Good night, sweetheart, she murmured without turning. I asked, why the flannel sweater? It's not cold silence. Then quietly, I've just been feeling chilly at night. I rolled over and pulled her close. Her skin was damp with sweat. You feeling all right? I asked, pretending concern. Not really. She whispered my hand, brushed over her chest, grazing the spot where the bruise had been. I can think of a few ways to warm you up. She froze, David. Sorry, I'm just exhausted. I released her. Okay. Marge nestled into my side. Last night was amazing, but today wiped me out. I've got a light day Wednesday. Let's make it special, okay? Sure, I replied, voice flat. Tuesday morning, I left before sunrise. Mid-morning. George called trackers live. He said SLA, a GPS on Perez's car last night. Here's the login. I checked immediately. Perez's car was parked across town. I told my boss I had to step out and drove home to check the recorders. The first recording hit like a gut punch. Marge was on the phone with her friend Ashley Ash. I had the best sex this weekend, she gushed. Ashley chuckled with Will know Marge sighed dreamily with David Sunday night. It was incredible, like nothing we've had in years. What changed? Ashley asked, sounding genuinely curious. I don't know. Marge admitted we didn't do anything new. It just clicked his touch the way he held me. It was perfect. Better than Will. Ashley teased. Marge didn't hesitate. Oh, absolutely. David makes love to me. I feel safe with him, Will. He's just Z-fun, sure, but I'd never want David to treat me like that. Ashley laughed. It's the thrill, the wildness of it. That's why I started seeing Brian Sears last year. Marge confessed Brian Sears, another man my head spun, and Ashley, she was a cheater too. For a moment I wondered if I should tell her husband Mike. Would it destroy him like this was destroying me? But hadn't I just judged him, assuming he knew about Will and stayed silent? He deserved the truth, just like I had. I decided Mike would get the recording, but only after I finished dealing with Perez. Ashley's next call early Tuesday had a different tone. Hey, Ash, Marge answered quietly. You sound off. Ashley noted everything. Okay. David noticed the flannel pajamas and the closed bathroom door. Marge muttered. He asked about it last night. I lied, said I was cold, but the room was like a sauna and I was sweating all night. I don't think he believed me. Did he push? Ashley asked, voice softening. He tried, Marge admitted, but I couldn't let him see the bruise. I promised we'd have a special night Wednesday. He didn't seem convinced. We just lay there afterward like strangers. Her sigh was heavy and the worst part. The whole time I kept thinking about Will, not David. That was it. I saved the recording, shut the laptop, and headed straight to the motel. Perez's car was parked outside. It was lunchtime. I crossed the street to the bar, but Mary wasn't working. Peeking through the window, I spotted Perez alone in a corner, booth flipping through the menu. This was my moment. I walked up to Perez's motel room, knocked twice, and slid the key into the lock. The room was empty. Ignoring the disheveled bed, I headed straight for the desk. His laptop sat open, QuickBooks filling the screen. Plugging in my flash drive, I installed a keylogger, skipping the screenshot feature and focusing solely on email activity, web history, and stored files, especially his accounting records. If Perez was involved in anything illegal, I'd find it. Once the keylogger was active, I enabled remote desktop access and slipped in a lightweight control program disguised under his domain name. It would look like he'd installed it himself from the motel's network after hiding the program icon and returning the screen to QuickBooks. I quietly exited the room back at the office. I tackled my usual tasks, surprisingly calm. The power of control was obsessive. That evening, I returned home in high spirits, helping the kids with homework and chatting with Marge like everything was perfectly normal. At first, she looked uncertain, like she was bracing for conflict. But as I kept up the asti, her nerves settled. Around 10 p.m., she stretched and gave a soft smile. I'm heading to bed, she murmured. All right, I said, pretending to focus on my laptop. I've got a little work to finish. See you in the morning, sure, rest up. I thought bitterly got to be ready for your lover tomorrow. There was still hours worth of data to sift through. Recordings, spyware logs, intercepted calls, but not tonight. Instead, I focused on the footage from Marg's dash cam, quietly downloading it before returning the recorder to her car. By the time I climbed into bed, she was either fast asleep or faking it. I settled on the edge of the mattress mind, already racing about what the next day would bring. Wednesday morning, Marge was up before me, which worked to my advantage. The thought of her heading off to cheat again made my stomach churn. Knowing I'd soon see the proof only made it worse. Downstairs, she was already plating breakfast. When I walked into the kitchen, dressed sharply for work, she flashed a bright smile. Perfect timing, love. Good morning, she chirped. I grunted in response, pouring coffee. Her smile faltered. You're usually in a better mood now. You know how I feel most mornings, I replied coolly. She blinked, caught off guard, then forced to laugh. The kids wandered in, and she quickly slipped into mom mode, chattering about school and errands. I stayed quiet, watching her steal worried glances my way. When she set my plate down, she hesitated, eyes narrowing. David, is something wrong? I shrugged hard to say. Without warning, I pulled her into a tight hug. She melted into the embrace, her body relaxing as she sighed against my chest. I love you, I murmured. Can't imagine life without you. There's no woman. I'd rather make love to her heart raced. Of course, David, I love you too. She whispered, tears. Welling, I'll prove it. Tonight, I'm going to wear you out. I stepped back abruptly and walked out the door without another word. I drove straight to the motel, downloaded the surveillance footage, and headed home around. Thoughts swirling. How was I supposed to act like everything was fine, knowing what I'd soon uncover while the recordings transferred? I paced the house, restless and bitter. Facing Marge that night seemed unbearable. I started with Perez's emails. Within hours, I had a clear picture of the man. He operated 3 companies, each selling overpriced goods to military bases, Fortune 500 companies, and government agencies. He was also juggling affairs with 5 women, Marge among them. I copied his QuickBooks files and captured login credentials through the keylogger. 6 corporate credit cards stood out, each with complete account numbers listed in the expense reports. Then I turned to his phone calls. One stood out immediately. A conversation with a boss employee complaining about duplicate serial numbers on shipments. Perez's irritation was obvious. Fix it. He snapped the new audit systems. A nightmare. Another call revealed his corrupt side. A desperate supplier pleaded for a contract. Perez finally cut him off $5,000. Gets you $100,000 in sales. Just bump your prices 2% to cover it. The supplier hesitated. How do I get you the money? I'll tell you where to meet. Perez replied, coolly, 2 days and your proposal gets approved. But the call that hit hardest involved someone from the B's purchasing office feeding Perez. Confidential bid prices, insider trading, plain and simple, and of course, there were the personal calls. Marg's voice drifted through one recording, sounding far too intimate. Even after everything, hearing it still hurt. I organized everything into folders. One for Marge, one for Perez, video-audio documents, backups for each. It was time to loop in George. When George answered, I laid it all out. He listened quietly, then sighed. David, this won't hold up in court, but it makes my job easier. We've been tracking procurement issues at the base for months. Missing inventory, duplicate serials, substandard materials. You need to see this for yourself. I said, can you come to my office? No, my place. We'll go over everything. Then drown our sorrows over dinner. George's tone hardened. I'm driving. Your drinking deal. The plan was simple. Get wasted with George and avoid Marge until morning. Then reality hit. It was nearly 1 p.m., her meeting time with Will. I called her phone straight to voicemail. Of course, she wouldn't want to talk now. I left a brief message heading to George's back late. With time to spare, I reviewed more footage. Monday morning, Perez greeted another woman with a kiss. They barely made it past the door before hitting the bed. I saved the clip Tuesday. He slept with 2 different maids morning and afternoon. I copied those 2 at. George picked me up. We pored over the evidence, drinking until time blurred. That's the last thing I remember. Thursday morning, I woke around my head pounding. The house was silent. On the kitchen table sat a note. Since you were too drunk to set your alarm, don't expect me to be your wake-up call. Figure it out yourself. I chuckled. Perfect. And angry. Marge was easier to avoid calling in sick. I drove to the motel to retrieve the surveillance footage, the one I'd been dreading on the way home. George called, his voice tight. The investigation's moving quickly, he said. The supplier who paid the bribe agreed to wear a wire. We've pieced together how Perez and his team pull off their thefts. A preliminary report's already on the base commander's desk. He paused. Military police will search Perez's office, motel room, and home soon. Make sure your keyloggers are wiped. Already handled. I assured him. Good. The search will happen in about 10 days. Can you hold off confronting Marge? Until then, I was about to agree, when George dropped a bombshell. The leak feeding Perez inside info it's coming from purchasing Marge is now on the list of persons of interest. I almost laughed. That's insane. Marge doesn't steal. But then I froze. Hadn't I once believed she'd never cheat? Swallowing my rage, I promised to check in tomorrow back home. I wasted no time downloading the surveillance footage from the motel. Hours of nothing passed until the timestamp hit PM. My heart pounded as I pressed play. Perez appeared first, swinging the door open. A moment later, Marge stepped inside without hesitation. They embraced, kissing like teenagers. "Take it easy this time," she murmured against his lips. Clothes hit the floor. They tumbled onto the bed. My vision blurred as tears welled up. Thursday night passed in strained silence. The kids were out, and Marge and I moved around each other like strangers. Once the house settled and everyone was asleep, I retrieved the recorder from her car and combed through the fresh audio. Sure enough, there it was, Ashley's voice. "So how'd it go?" Ashley asked eagerly. "Will was fine," Marge sighed a little rough. "But you know how much he enjoys our time together." "And David?" "Nothing. He got hammered with." George stumbled in reeking of gin and passed out without saying a word. Ashley chuckled. "Bad timing. Maybe no," Marge muttered. "I practically invited him last night, even told him in the morning that I'd wear him out. He didn't bite, just left for work without a kiss." "You think he suspects?" "Anything." "How could he?" Marge scoffed. "I only meet Will when David's at work. If anything, he's sulking, because we've barely been intimate lately. This is his way of punishing me." I saved the recording, shaking my head. Let her think what she wanted. The longer she felt secure, the better. That night, she brushed against me more than once, lingering in her touches. I stayed cold. When I finally climbed into bed around 2 a.m., she was already snoring softly. "Sorry, Ashley, wrong guess." Friday morning, I skipped breakfast, grabbed my organic detection kit after work, and swung by the motel to collect the latest footage back home. I transferred everything to an encrypted drive and ran the test positive. No shock there. Reviewing the videos was like pouring salt into an open wound. One clip froze me in place. Mary, my bartender friend, entering Perez's room. He handed her a wad of cash and they headed straight for the bed. "Mary," I sat there stunned. Two other recordings stood out. One caught Marge in a playful phone call with Perez, flirty teasing, followed by her agreeing to meet up. The other was more brutal. Marge arriving at his room, kissing him eagerly before sinking to her knees. No cuddling, no lingering, just transaction-like efficiency. I saved everything into organized folders and immediately called George urgent. I said, "We need to talk. Come to my place." He offered too risky. "Marge could be home any minute. Meet me at your office." 10 minutes later, I handed George a flash drive. 3 key files. The first one's the hardest to watch. I'll wait in the car. An hour passed before George slid into the passenger seat. Face tight bar. Now I need answers from Mary. Mary was already behind the counter when we arrived. Her smile flickered as she spotted us wordlessly. She ordered 2 gin and tonics, hugged George, and squeezed my hand. "Hey guys," she greeted, the brightness in her tone clearly forced. George didn't dance around it. "Mary, what's going on?" Her face crumpled. "You were right, George. I caught something. That's why I'm quitting the bar. I can't risk passing it along." My stomach dropped. Mary's voice turned bitter. "So much for nursing school. That dream's dead. Now it's just about surviving like hell." "It is George," and I said almost in unison. Mary blinked. "Surprised. You've worked too damn hard for this." George said, gripping her hand. "Since the day I arrested you, you've been fighting to rebuild your life. We're not letting you throw it away." I nodded. "We'll figure something out. School's not off the table." Tears welled in her eyes as she glanced between us. "I don't deserve friends like you, but I can't let you bail me out." I smiled. "You don't get a choice. We're doing this for the first time that night." She laughed. A soft, broken sound, but genuine. The tension eased, but we all knew the storm hadn't passed close to midnight. I finally dragged myself to bed before parting ways. George had promised to pull some strings and see if he could get Mary a job in the base's purchasing department. Word was, several openings were about to pop up. Saturday crawled by. Marge and I barely spoke. During our usual movie night, she deliberately sat between the kids instead of next to me. Her smug expression said it all. She thought she was winning. She retreated to bed early, leaving me free to check the latest recordings. Most were uneventful, until I stumbled across one new email from Perez. "Thanks for Friday, can't wait for Wednesday." Sunday dragged just as slowly. That night, I noticed Marge still changed into pajamas in the bathroom, clearly avoiding being seen undressing. She knew the foundation of our marriage had cracked beyond repair. She climbed into bed with deliberate roughness, as if to make sure I was awake. I didn't flinch. Eventually, she sighed and turned her back to me. Monday afternoon, George called with an update. "Everything's set. He said the raid goes down next Monday. Can you hold off confronting Marge? Until then, we can't risk Perez getting spooked." "Yeah," I agreed. "I'll tell her. I'm heading out of town for work Wednesday to Sunday. Smart move. Play it cool." Without hesitation, I booked a room directly above Perez's for 5 nights. That evening at dinner, I mentioned my trip offhandedly, flying out Wednesday morning. I said back Sunday night. Julia frowned. "Another trip. You were gone last month too." "Yeah," Dad Tom added. "Do you have to go?" I shrugged. "Work's work. If I had a choice, I'd stay home." Marge barely reacted. No surprise, no disappointment, just nothing. Tuesday crawled by in awkward silence. I packed a small bag and waited until everyone was asleep to check the recorders. One conversation stood out. Marge's morning call with Ashley. Ashley?" Marge snapped David's, ruining everything. "Will or David?" Ashley asked, confused. "David?" Marge growled. "We've been arguing or ignoring each other for days. Now he's leaving again Wednesday through Sunday. How the hell am I supposed to juggle both men in one day?" "Damn," Ashley muttered. "Marge, forget the fantasy for a minute. Fix things with David before you wreck everything." Marge sighed heavily. "I know. But if he'd stop being such an A, I'd blow his mind. Why does this have to be so complicated?" Unbelievable I was the problem. Classic still. I saved the recording. Wednesday morning, I left the house as if heading to work, but checked into the motel by noon. 2 laptops, one for live feeds, one for storage, buzzed to life on the desk. At 1 p.m. sharp, Marge pulled into the lot. She grabbed her laptop from the passenger seat and headed straight for Perez's room, switching to the live feed. I watched her knock. Perez opened the door with a grin, and they kissed before she stepped inside. "Hang on," Marge said, heading straight for the desk. "Let me check my email first." They worked quietly for 10 minutes before she closed the laptop and smiled. All done. Perez didn't waste time. "Good, now, for the real reason you're here. Clothes." Hit the floor fast. I muted the audio, stomach churning, and turned to my second laptop, remotely accessing both their devices. While they were distracted by PM, they began to stir, giving me nearly 4 hours of uninterrupted access. As they shuffled awake, I quickly logged out, but kept the live feed running. Marge blinked at the clock and then shook Perez's shoulder. Well, it's past 5. We dozed off. He groaned, rubbing his eyes. Damn, I told my wife we'd have dinner tonight. Marge smacked his arm playfully. Gee, don't bring her up. I already hear enough about your family. Don't act like you're not part of my life. He teased, pulling her closer. Her expression softened. Sorry, I love my family, but sometimes I can't help feeling jealous. Perez ran his fingers through her hair. I like pretending you're mine. Marge gave a faint smile. I chose to be here with you, but I do love my husband, and I can't risk losing him. I need to make things right at home. Perez nodded. Same here. My family's everything. As he stood, he winced. Damn, my shoulders are on fire. Marge gasped. Oh no, will I scratched you? I didn't mean to. Perez cursed under his breath, inspecting his back in the mirror. Damn it, Marge, you really tore me up. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm sorry, we just lose control. Apparently he grumbled, tugging on his shirt. Let's get dressed. I need to head out. They dressed quickly. Perez kissed her cheek, squeezed her waist, and whispered, See you soon. Beautiful Marge kissed him back, then left the room from my vantage point. I watched her trudge to her car, to the world. She looked like someone leaving a long workday, but I knew better, and she'd pay for it. Thursday and Friday blurred together as I balanced my job with my side projects, each moment bringing me closer to the inevitable fallout. Thursday afternoon, I intercepted a call from Marge to Perez. Will, she began, voice strained. This has been fun, but I can't keep doing this. I'm ending it. What? Perez snapped. Why, now it's getting too complicated. Marge said firmly. David's distant, and I won't risk my marriage for this. We're done. They argued for a few minutes before Perez sighed in defeat. Fine, talk soon. No. Marge murmured goodbye, Will. She hung up without another word. Late Friday night, I finalized everything. I transferred files, wiped logs, and disabled the keyloggers. Before signing out, I accessed Marg's computer through Perez's, making sure the login traced back to the motel's IP address. As a final nail in the coffin, I forwarded all of Perez's active bid proposals to Marg's work email. From an investigator's perspective, it would look like she'd been leaking sensitive information. Sunday afternoon, I returned to an empty house. I collected the voice recorders, wiped them clean, and packed them alongside the one from Marg's car for George. After unpacking, I poured myself a stiff drink, trying to settle my nerves. Not long after Julia and Marge returned from grocery shopping, Tom joined us to help unpack, and the evening passed quietly. No one mentioned my supposed business trip. Monday morning, I struggled to concentrate at work until an AM call from our family doctor's office shattered my focus. Mr. Atkinson, the receptionist said, sounding unusually serious. Dr. Benson needs to see you immediately. My stomach nodded. Why, what's wrong? She hesitated. He'll explain everything. Can you come in today? Fine, I'll head over now. Dr. Benson's expression was grim when I entered his office. David, I need to run some tests. This is important tests for what I demanded. Just tell me, Doc. He sighed, removing his glasses. Your wife came in this morning complaining of feeling unwell. The test showed she has 3 sexually transmitted infections. I froze. She insisted you were her only partner. He continued, so we assumed you were the source. My voice sounded foreign, detached. Test me now. The staff avoided eye contact as they prepped the lab. A nurse drew blood with a needle that felt unnecessarily large. An hour later, Dr. Benson returned, shaking his head. "David, you're completely clean. I owe you an apology. Your wife clearly wasn't truthful." I exhaled slowly, anger simmering beneath the surface. "Thanks, Doc. We haven't been intimate for weeks now. I know why." He handed me my results, just as my phone buzzed. "Julia." "Doctor, excuse me," I said, answering quickly. "Julia, what's wrong?" Her voice broke with tears. "Mom told us you cheated and gave her an STD. How could you?" My grip tightened on the phone. "Julia, I'm standing in the doctor's office. I'm clean here. Talk to Dr. Benson without hesitation." Benson took the phone. "Julia, this is Dr. Benson. Your father tested negative for everything. He didn't infect your mother." A moment later, Julia's muffled sobs came through the line. "Dad, I'm so sorry." She sounded so sure. We believed her. "It's okay, sweetheart," I soothed. "Tell Tom the truth, but don't say anything to your mom. I'll be home soon." At the front desk, the reception silently handed me my test results. Then, almost as an afterthought, she slid another envelope across the counter, and I must have made a mistake. "Looks like I accidentally included your wife's results too," she said with a faint smile. I nodded, understanding her intent immediately. Marge wouldn't find a sympathetic ear when she returned for treatment. Pulling into the driveway, I spotted extra cars. Marge's parents, perfect. Inside, the air was thick with tension. My father-in-law's booming voice cut through the chaos. "You fool! He barked you, cheated on my daughter, and gave her a disease. I'll break you." He was tall, broad, and still powerful from his ears and the minds I had. Seconds before he swung, I stepped closer, locking eyes with him. "If what you think is true, you'd be right to hit me. But it's not." His brows furrowed. He hesitated. "Explain fast," wordlessly. I handed him my test results. He read them once, then again and again. His anger drained into disbelief as Marge's sobs grew louder in the background. Finally, he looked up. "You're clean? My daughter has an STD? Someone else gave it to her." "She lied. She cheated exactly," I said quietly. "We haven't slept together in weeks. That's why I'm clean." He clenched the papers in his fists, veins bulging. "David, I'm sorry." I jumped to conclusions. "Thanks for listening. I muttered my marriage might be over, but at least you know the truth." He nodded, shoulders slumping. "We need to talk." I grabbed his shirt, slamming him against the table. "No, this conversation happens on my terms. She's your daughter, but she's my wife, and she dragged you and the kids into this mess." Julia called me in tears. "I don't even know what Tom thinks." I released him, stepping back. "You're only here because Marge involved you, but this is my family. Stay out of it, got it?" His jaw tightened, then relaxed into relief. "And respect." "Yeah, David got it, we." Stepped into the living room together. The moment Marge saw me, she erupted her voice, clashing with her mother's frantic shouts. In the corner, Tom sat slumped forward, tears silently falling down his cheeks. Julia darted around her grandfather, rushing straight into my arms. "Dad, I love you," she whispered. Tom hesitated for a heartbeat, then stood and joined us. They clung to me as Marge sobbed and her mother hurled insults. Julia's hand brushed against the papers I held. "Is this the proof?" I nodded, jaw tight. Without hesitation, she took the reports and pulled Tom closer together. They scanned the damning words. David Atkinson and negative Marge Atkinson. Positive for 3 STDs. Their eyes met and they squeezed me tighter. Julia turned fury, hardening her face. "Mom," she snapped, "how can you still yell at Dad? He didn't betray us. You did." Marg's knees buckled and she collapsed, lapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. Julia spun to face her grandmother, thrusting the reports into her trembling hands. The older woman's eyes widened as she read, and her shoulders sagged under the weight of realization. Marge glanced up wild-eyed and defensive. "Why is everyone treating me like the villain here? This isn't fair." Julia stepped forward, slowly holding the papers high. "You lied to us, Mom. You cheated on Dad. You betrayed our family." Marge gasped, her face twisting with rage. She lunged, hand raised, to slap Julia, but Julia was faster. She caught her mother's wrist with ease, her gaze sharp and cold. "Don't you dare," she hissed. "You lost the right to discipline me the moment you tried to destroy our family." The room froze. Julia stood tall, voice steady despite the tremble beneath it. "You'll always be my mother, and I'll always love you." She continued, "But you turned us against Dad with lies. I'll never forgive you for that." Without waiting for a response, she turned and hugged me tightly. Tom followed his silence, more powerful than words. Across the room, Marge sat frozen, wide-eyed and desperate. "Kids, please, Marge," pleaded, her voice cracking. "Your dad infected me weeks ago. He probably got treated in secret." I begged him for closeness, and he kept pushing me away, her desperation. "Rose, I never cheated. He's lying to make me look bad. I've been faithful since the day we met." Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. My father-in-law's face darkened, fists tightening. It was time to end this. I stepped toward Marge, ignoring everyone else. "This is your last chance. Tell the truth, or I'll show them the proof." For a moment her lip quivered. Then, like a cornered animal, she lashed out. "How dare you!" she screamed. "You have nothing because I did nothing. Show this so-called proof." I didn't blink. Fine. I walked to the cabinet, retrieving my laptop. Marge's bravado flickered as I connected it to the TV. While Marge had been with Perez, I'd used one of his company credit cards to register a domain and set up a website. It was time to reveal it. Looking her dead in the eyes, I asked, "You ended things with Will last Thursday, right?" Her sneer returned. "You're insane. There's never been anyone but you." I opened an email and projected it on the TV. "Recognize this man? Will Perez?" The color drained from her face. "No, he sent me a link to his site." I said calmly, "You're featured front and center." Turning to Julia and Tom, I added, "You two should head upstairs." Julia crossed her arms, defiant. "No, she dragged us into this. We're staying." Tom glanced at the screen. "Dad, if you send us away, I'll find the site myself in 5 seconds." I sighed, defeated. He was right. He'd caught the URL already, all right. I muttered, clicking the link. The screen flickered to life, revealing a deep blue background. A cold male voice spoke. "Welcome to the lovers of Will Perez." Marge gasped as a slideshow of women appeared. Each photo fully clothed, but un mistaka intimate. The voice continued. "Here are the married women I've seduced. Every encounter is recorded like what you see. Message for high-def footage. None of the women know they're being filmed." The fourth image froze everyone in place. It was Marge. She wore a gray business pantsuit, one of her regular work outfits. The cursor hovered over her picture as the voice announced, "Meet Marge, mid-50s, curvy. Plenty of footage available. Click here for previews of Marge in action. Full videos upon request." The room plunged into silence. Marge stood like a statue. Face, pale, hands trembling. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Staring at the screen, she whimpered. No, this can't be real. I clicked her image. 8 video thumbnails appeared, each labeled with dates and brief descriptions. Marg's eyes widened. She recognized the settings, the positions, the undeniable truth. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Her mother rushed to her side while her father stood rigid, as though he'd been punched in the gut. Tom's fists clenched. Julia's face twisted with fury. I think we've seen enough, I muttered, stepping back not enough. Julia snapped eyes. Blazing videos can be faked. I want the truth before I could stop her. She snatched the mouse and clicked the first video. The screen flickered, buffered, then played the room filled with harsh breathing and whispered promises. Julia recoiled hand, flying to her mouth. Oh my God, this is disgusting. How could you? Tom stood silent, his entire body trembling. Marge sobbed into her mother's shoulder, the reality crashing down. Determined, Julia clicked the next video. Marge's cries grew louder, the weight of her lies crushing her. Julia reached for the third thumbnail, but I caught her hand enough. She froze, then nodded, tears streaking down her face, without another word. She threw her arms around me. Tom joined us, silent and furious. Marge's parents stood helpless, while Marge herself clung to her mother, broken beyond repair. After a long moment, I broke the silence. Why Marge choked on her sobs, I don't know. I'm so sorry, David God. I'm so sorry. I exhaled slowly and handed Tom the car keys. Kids, get out for a bit. Dinner's on me, need cash. Tom shook his head. We're good. We'll be back later. Julia wiped her face, just grabbing my purse. Once they left, I turned to Marge and her parents. I'll be back in 30 minutes, Marge. We need to talk, you two. I nodded at her parents. Stay, she's going to need you. I wandered the streets aimlessly, the crisp air, failing to calm my nerves, but sharpening my thoughts. By the time I returned home, the house was eerily silent. Everyone sat around the kitchen table, their faces hollow and drained. Marge stood. The moment I stepped inside David, she murmured, eyes red and swollen. Thank you for coming back. I nodded and gestured for her to sit down. We've got a bigger problem. Her face blanched. I leaned over the table. Perez was arrested this afternoon. I stated flatly. Her breath hitched. George's investigation exposed the whole scheme. Fraud, blackmail, kickbacks. The entire operation unraveled. Silence stretched across the room. Marge blinked rapidly, tears welling again. Her parents sat. Rigid expressions carved from stone, his office, his companies, even the motel room raided. 2 more arrests followed, one guy from logistics, another from procurement. I stood, eyes locked on hers. And there's more. George uncovered emails from your account, messages leaking contract details and competitive bids straight to Perez. Her head jerked up, wild-eyed. That's a lie. I never did that. Her mother's voice cracked. How can we believe you now? Mar's sobs grew louder. I exhaled heavily, exhausted beyond words. You're not in custody because you're my wife. George bent the rules to buy you time. If you're not in his office tomorrow morning, they'll issue a warrant. I leaned closer. If you're guilty, you're looking at federal charges. Her scream ripped through the room. I didn't do it, David. I know I lied. I cheated. I don't deserve forgiveness. Maybe prison would be fair for everything else, but I never leaked classified information. I studied her face, searching for deception. Was this another lie, Marge? I asked quietly. Did you ever bring your laptop to his motel room? Her face crumpled. Yes, sometimes I worked there while pretending to take personal days. I'm so sorry, David. I clenched my jaw. Personal days to cheat. She flinched, but nodded. Did you ever leave the laptop unattended, open, connected to the base network, while you showered or napped? Her breath hitched. Yes, oh my God. I never thought, how could I be so stupid without another word? I grabbed her laptop, powered it on, and immediately cut off the Wi-Fi. I had to move fast. One of my final acts while accessing her computer remotely had been scheduling an automatic email blast designed to make it look like Perez had sent out confidential files. With the internet disabled, the emails hadn't been sent. Fainting confusion at the login screen. I asked, "What's your password?" Her face twisted with shame. "Perez," she whispered. I let the weight of her betrayal hang in the air before responding. "Marge, he installed remote access software. He could see everything, control everything." Her head snapped up, horror etched into every line of her face. "He set me up. Looks like he wanted more than just your body." I leaned over the laptop, pretending to search good thing. I broke the internet. I muttered, "There's a scheduled task here. Set to blast emails to your entire contact list. Family, friends, co-workers." Marge collapsed into her chair, burying her face in her hands. Oh my God, he's punishing me for cutting things off. Her mother wrapped an arm around her, whispering useless reassurances. I sighed, this might be enough to clear you. 3 heads snapped up. Mar's father, who once been ready to knock me flat, now looked more confused than angry. This proves Perez had remote access. I explained it's possible. He sent the leaks himself. If you're innocent, the logs will show his IP address. During the transmissions, Marge wiped her face, nodding mutely. A flicker of hope sparked in her exhausted eyes. But I wasn't done. One more thing, I added. While I had access to Perez's system, I installed surveillance software. I copied all his personal videos onto his hard drive. As far as the authorities can tell, he recorded everything himself. Her father inhaled sharply. Wait, you mean? The videos of are now admissible evidence. I finished. Perez won't just face fraud and embezzlement charges. He'll be hit with illegal surveillance, extortion, and invasion of privacy. I leaned back, letting it sink in. I also uploaded recordings of his blackmail threats. George already has them. It's game. Over months later, Perez stood convicted on multiple counts. Fraud, extortion, racketeering. The IRS launched an audit into his undeclared earnings, and his wife filed for divorce just 2 days into his sentence. A week after the conviction, George and I found ourselves at the bar where Mary used to work. She'd landed a job in Bass procurement, allowing her to finally start night classes for medical school. I nursed a gin and tonic, swirling the glass idly. "Still owe you for the bar surveillance gear," I joked. George waved it off. "Forget it. Besides, we blew $1,500 each at the casino yesterday. That's punishment enough." I chuckled, taking a sip. This gin's not as good as Mary's, but it'll do. At that moment, Mike walked in. He looked wrecked, hollow eyes, slumped shoulders, the gait of a man who hadn't slept in days. I told him where to find me. Sooner or later, the truth always drove people here without a word. He sank into the seat across from me. I slid a flash drive across the table. "Everything you need," I said quietly. "Recordings, emails, videos, the whole mess, Marge Ashley, it's all there." Mike stared at the drive for a long moment, then downed half his drink in one gulp, turning to George. His voice wavered despite his steady tone. George, he muttered, I need to rent some surveillance gear. George sighed, rubbing his temples. And so the cycle began again.